Writers, readers, drinkers, lend me your ears and your livers. Welcome to Writers Drinking Whiskey Open Bar, your boozy literary author panel, where we're going to dive deep into the writing subjects of today. I'm your host and resident object lesson, William R. Hincy. And joining me today, I'm really thrilled to have Tim T.D. Johnson, Dana Ridenauer, and Dan Conover, who writes under D.C. McElroy, with me. Everyone, welcome to the bar.
Thank you.
Thank you, Bill.
Howdy.
Good to be back.
Just so everyone knows, I'll include full bios in the description. So anyone wants more information, including links, how you can get more information on any of us here, just go to the description. You'll find all you want and more there. So first question of the first open bar ever, torture. How do you balance describing the physical, emotional, psychological pain a character may be experiencing with kind of not repulsing the reader or overwhelming the narrative, kind of slogging things down with too much description just of that pain? And so maybe, Tim, we can start with you and we'll scroll through.
Okay. Well, torture, which comes in many forms, I think, as you indicated. The best way for me to begin is there's a character in Reciprocity who is there. He is meant to frighten both his audiences in the book and frighten people who haven't met him, but he's also there to frighten the reader and to build tension for the reader, more from the reader's imagination than anything else. I do think that creating some graphic situations is fine as long as it doesn't feel gratuitous to me, because I feel like as a reader of crime thrillers and horror novels, there's a line that can be crossed where you say, okay, come on. Some things can be left to my imagination and they're going to scare me more. What you don't see, what you anticipate. And so I like to have a character anticipate and fear something bad coming from a particular antagonist as much as actually having that bad thing happen. The word dread is one that I value as a writer. And if I can express that through a character, then I can instill it in the reader. If I can do that, I'm succeeding.
Sure. I love what you said too about because I tend to think of it like you want to lead the reader's imagination to something, because that's when things are really going to kick off. Like words do so much of the work, but the real pulse when you really connect with someone is when their imagination takes hold, and that sense of dread. And then you could lose that sense of dread never describing it, though, right? If nothing bad actually happens, you never have to witness it. You can start to.
I agree. You have to some extent, you have to deliver. When I introduced Fingo, which was in a conversation among the 5 members of the Mafia Commission, the La Cosa Nostra's governing body, it was when the head of the commission told the other members, "We're bringing Fingo over from Sicily to track these guys down that are killing our brethren, our bosses, city by city." And there's a silence in the room. And following that silence, one of them says, "Is it true about the 38 days? That it took 38 days. Fingo took 38 days with a magistrate. And strategically, the mafia in Sicily, how did they deal with their enemies? Pretty straightforwardly, and it was for the purpose of instilling fear in the justice system. 38 days. What did that mean? The reader has to think, what does that mean? When the boss says, yeah, these guys are afraid of him. But then later on in that book, I had to deliver, but still with restraint, is what I believe in.
Sure. Sure. Yeah, that is a great moment in the book, and it is. I think that's a great way to illustrate it too, because it's like he doesn't go into what 38 days is, and you're left to contemplate that for all
your
that
imagination. Right.
time.
Right.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. Sure. Dan, you want to chime in?
I don't like torture scenes, right? I try to avoid them, and
Fair.
the way that you can tell that Tim did a good job on that one is that I enjoyed that scene, right? And it does build and carry the tension, and it does ultimately deliver. I have in sort of a foundational scene in this series that I've been writing. It's not torture per se, but it is it's a very violent, what's supposed to be, the one of the primary characters survives this event as a teenager, and it's creepy. I don't like doing that to people, and even in fiction, I'd rather avoid it, right? But I do think that that a lot of my perspective is informed by my wife, who just hates gratuitous violence, hates that sort of, there are some people who write torture scenes and you kind of get the sense that they're kind of enjoying it. Yeah. If I were on a dating app, that would be one of my turnoffs.
Very good. That'll be a question for another day. Like, what if you were on a dating app? What would be your turn offs,
that's
turn
right.
ons? Yeah, that's good. Good. Awesome, Dana. You want to chime in?
Well, I found that when I'm writing any kind of violent scene or a torture scene or anything like that, I just have to write it. I just have to sit down at the computer in a dark room, and I have to just spill it all out in as much detail as I can on a piece of paper, and then walk away from it. I had a scene in the second book, I guess, that was like that, where Lexi was attacked, and it was just a really violent scene, and I was so upset after writing it that I had broken into a sweat. I was just clammy. I was sick to my stomach, and I just walked outside. I had to go for a long walk afterwards, and I came back to it. And then that's what I'll do. I'll come back to it and I'll read it, and then I'll start editing for the general population. Because when I'm writing a scene like that, chances are I've seen a scene like that. So I've seen it up close and personal. I've seen it, felt it, smelt it, and all that kind of stuff. So I like to get it on paper as it is. And then I have to edit it for the general population at that point in time, because I don't want to offend people, and I don't want to turn people off. And I trust people. I mean, I trust my editors. If my editors say this is a little too much, I think you need to pull back here, then that's what I'll do. I usually do that. But I have had people here recently in the book that I'm writing now, I had a scene where the editor thought I should back off of it, and I backed off of it, and I went back like about a month later and I reread it. I was like, this is just there's nothing there. There's nothing to elicit any kind of real emotion. So I went back and I fixed it and put it back the way I had it originally. So it's just, you got to roll the dice on those sometimes and say, can my readers handle this, or is this too much? And I think after a while, especially after you have 2 or 3 books out there, you start to know what your readers want from you as far as that kind of stuff too, and what they can't handle.
Sure. Well, I think 2 things really caught on me when you were saying that. There's one is, to me, I look at writing as an art, and the big point of art is eliciting a reaction, like some reaction from the person. So you want to get a reaction out of your reader. You want to elicit something. So if you pull too much punches, right? If you pull too much, then you may not get that reaction. And then if you go too heavy, maybe you just pummel them. It's just all goes to hell from there. But I think the other one was the effect it can have on the writer, right? I know when I was writing, the most biographical thing I've ever written is my novel, But the Ripping Apart. And it changed a lot over time, but the real event that started it, that inspired the story, was my wife and I went and visited. Well, we went to check in on her old school teacher. My wife was a refugee, had come over from Hong Kong, and this one school teacher was extremely kind to her family, would take her and her brother and little sister out to like the museum and things. And she learned a lot of her English, and she happened to move up in grades with her. So she was like her second, third, and fourth, if I remember right. She was her teacher for multiple years. And so she had stayed in contact, but like a kind of retirement and stuff, the lady had become a hoarder and an alcoholic and was struggling. And my wife had tried to call her and was like, "Hey, will you go with me, to check on her? Because I'm worried what I might find there." And luckily we went there and she was fine. She was, as fine as that situation would allow. And ironically, this is the first chapter in that book, is she had lost her phone beneath a stack of phone books. That's all the phone books, she kept them. So there's just pillars of phone books everywhere. She drops her phone beneath a stack and didn't look for it, or just, or couldn't find it. We ended up finding it for her then. And so the story then fictionalized from there to where I was really struggling as a human and single father and things at that time. And seeing her struggle gave me some kind of glimpse of what, I'm not that I'd be a hoarder, but the alcoholism, the struggling, kind of self-loathing kind of gave me that hint, and that became the tension. Jack in that story kind of became me, but to every trait being on the worst possible end, to where at the end I don't recognize myself with him. But because that's where it started from, there were times where I was writing that and trying to write about all the times I'd let people down, all the times I'd failed, and all the dumb things I've done. That was such from a personal space that it was hard. I mean, there was days I'm driving home from being out writing and just trying to breathe and just okay, none of that actually happened today. Bring it down a notch. And you just sometimes just walk away. And I got to come back to this now. And that story went through a funny thing. It was actually published under a different title by a different publisher. And then years later, it came back, and they agreed to give me the rights to it. It was a whole fiasco. That's for another day. We'll talk about horrible publishing experiences. But when it came back to me, I was like, okay, I'm going to release this again. I'm going to change the title. And that edit, I think, is actually where it got to the book it was meant to be, because then I had that distance and that space from it to come back and actually, okay, here I can pull back. Here I can examine it to where it can have an effect on you. Have any of you guys ever had something that affected you so much? Or
well, that scene I was talking about, that took me a while to get over. I mean, I was visibly and physically shaken by that one. Yeah. So It took me a while to get over it. My husband was like, "What is the matter with you?" And I'm like, "I just wrote a rough scene. I need to go for a walk. I need to get out of this house. I need to get outside."
Dana, was that a chapter that you, or a scene that you read in Beaufort?
No, it wasn't, but it was from that book. It was from that book.
Okay.
But
that's the one you read on the show as well, too, right?
Yeah.
It was the prologue to, was it book 2?
Yes. Beyond the Cabin. It was the prologue to Beyond the Cabin.
The prologue itself was actually I just wanted you to keep reading. Actually, I was like, oh man, let's just sit here, read the book, I'll hang out.
Sometimes I'm torn when I have parents come up and say, "Well, is it okay for my child to read your book?" And I'm like, "Well, how old is your child?" And the first book is pretty appropriate for, most, even kids 12 and 13. But, I get into the second book and I'm like, ooh, when you get under 16, I don't know. I don't think I want my kid reading it.
Right.
Well, have either of you ever had a reader, someone you don't know very well or may not know at all, but a reader, say at a Q&A or something like that at a signing, ask you, as I've been asked, about Fingo? I know Dan and Bill, you're both familiar with Fingo, the guy we were talking about a little while ago. As far as, is there something in you? Is there something the matter with you? And my answer to that is, well, no. In the case of Fingo, I created a character that I would be terrified of. It doesn't mean that I dream of doing things that Fingo does. Just like Dana, you've encountered people like that professionally. It doesn't mean that you have any of those thoughts or inclinations, and you're just getting them on paper so that you don't do something to somebody. But I've actually been asked that before when it comes to Fingo. Yeah.
All right.
Well, I've had the opposite.
Mortified. It's like, no, he frightens me. He's not like me, I hope.
Yeah.
But he frightens me. Yeah.
Well, that's good. I've had the opposite. I've had the people come up to me saying, "Oh my God, I hope none of that happened to you. Are you okay? Are you all right?" And
Yeah.
I'm like, "No, it's fiction. I'm good."
It is funny when that happens sometimes. I remember there was a running back. I'm sure, Tim, you'll remember this, being a Steeler fan like myself. But there was a running back for the Ravens named Ray Rice who hit his girlfriend or wife. I know they're married now. And so it became a thing. There was a police report, and he admitted to the NFL what happened. And it came out. He's like, I hit my wife. I drug her into an elevator. And they suspended him 2 games. And then the video got released. And everyone's up in arms. And I just remember it kept going, like, the video showed exactly what he said he did. Like, I always thought the 2 games was weird because they suspended, I think the year before, as Matavius Bryant of the Steelers got suspended for 4 games for smoking weed. So I'm like, this guy, like, he just busted maybe the year. I think Matavius Bryant ended up losing a year. And I'm like, man, just for for weed. And then this guy admitted, but he saw the video. And I think there is that, like, you need to have that power of imagination. And then I think sometimes if you don't have that power of imagination, then it's like, yeah, you must be Fingo. You must have. It's like, no, I'm playing make-believe.
Must barely be holding back from being a sadistic serial killer. I know the kind that would scare me, and that's who I wrote. Yeah.
Awesome. So then, now that we've had a delightful conversation on torture, way I've always wanted to start a show, and so thank you all,
as they all are.
Thank you for that. Thanks for tuning in. If you have a subject you'd like us to cover or something you'd like us to do a deeper dive into, drop us a comment. We'd love to include it on a future episode. The show is a labor of fun, and it's truly a reward in its own right. But if you would like to support me or the other amazing authors I have on there, consider picking up a book. Any of the writers we have on here would be a great addition to your bookshelf. Each one is a master storyteller and just a great person to boot, so you'd be doing them and yourself a great favor in picking those up. And while I would never call myself a master, because that would be, as we said in the 90s, conceited, I do have on a pretty good authority from critics and my mom alike that I'm not bad. So if you wouldn't mind picking up one of my books, that would be great as well. I would appreciate it. Thanks again for watching, and thanks to my great panel of guests for coming on and spending this time with us. Cheers.